In this video I'm going to look at how we start graphing our raw data in SPSS. So I want to do exactly the same thing that I did in Excel. Now typically when you cut and paste from data like this into SPSS, it doesn't always do such a good job. You can see that it's just put everything into one row each and not separated out into columns. So what I recommend is that if you are cutting pasting data around, that you go from Excel. So here I've got the data in Excel. I'm just going to select those three columns and copy them, and I'm pasting them into the data view. If you look down the bottom, we've got two tabs here, data view and variable view. The data view for SPSS. Okay, so you can see that SPSS is very similar to Excel, except that it has this special row up the top for putting the names in. When you cut and paste from Excel, it tends not to detect that this first row contains your variable names, and you will have to fix that up. If you import it, if you save your Excel file and then go through File, Open Data, and choose an Excel file, it will detect that first row. So just be aware that depending on how you get your data into SPSS, you may have to do some fixing up. So in this case, what we need to do is actually clear out this first row, because this is not a row of data. So I'm just going to select it, the whole row, by right-clicking on the one and saying clear. Now we've got the first person has moved up to the first row. So we want to change this variable name here and along the top, and to do that we go to the variable view. So down the bottom left hand corner, select variable view. So that first variable was the date, the island date, obviously not the real date. Then there was the name, and then there was the cause of death. Now, something you do need to be careful of in SPSS is that it does not like any spaces or special characters in the variable names. If you want to, you can put in something much shorter in there. You could put in COD for cause of death, or you could just put in death, or you could just put in cause. It doesn't matter what you put in here. This is just a note for you. The labels that it will print out on the graph, it will take from this label column. So it doesn't matter what you call it here in the name, you can put the complete label here. So I'll put in cause of death, and then you can put spaces in. If you want the label to be the same as the name here, you can leave that blank and it will copy that across. Okay, so now if we switch back to our data view, you can see that we've got some titles up the top here. Now just to get started in SPSS, we'll just do a quick bar graph. So I'm going to go up to the Graphs tab and Chart Builder, and most of the graphs we will be doing will come through Chart Builder. So we get the little previews of the options that we have down here. I'm just interested in the very simple bar graph, the first option, so I'm going to click on that, drag it into my preview window, and then I need to tell it which variable I want to chart, and obviously that's going to be the cause of death. So again, I just click on it, and then I'm going to click and drag, and when it's in the right spot you get that little hand appear. So off it, you get the black line through, and there you get the red hand, and you get a little preview of what it might look like. It says on the side here that it's going to count it. Occasionally this doesn't show up for you, and we will need it for some of the graphs, and that's toggled on and off with this button here, Element Properties. So if you're missing it and you need it, then you can toggle that on and off. So once you've dragged your variable in, you can just press OK, and it will show up in your output window. So the graphs aren't by default quite as pretty as they are in Excel, but how you can change these, it's it's pretty simple to go through these and change them, and I might have a look at that in a separate video. And the last thing I will warn you about is that you've actually got two separate files here. So you've got your data file, your SPSS file, and that will save with the extension of .sav, and you have an output file. When you save your data file, it will not save your output as well. This is a separate window, and you need to save this separately if you want to keep it. Usually what I do is I get the graphs the way that I want them, or the output that I want, and cut and paste it into Word. Occasionally I do want to keep my active graphs so that I can come back and change them and then save them again. And if you want to save this, you need to do it separately. So you'd click on save, and that will be a .spool file, SPO. So just remember that you need to save this file, and you must save your data file. This is absolutely critical. Occasionally some people will do a whole lot of work on their projects, and they'll say, I've done all this work, and they'll bring me their output file, and then they realize at the end that they only saved their output and they didn't save their raw data, and they have to go through the process of importing it all again if they want to redo anything. So that's an introduction to just very briefly using SPSS. We'll have a look at more detail at some of these options in some of the later videos.